see you guys in the dark.
This happened when I was about 12 or 13. For important context, I lived in an apartment complex that was 2 sets of rows, each row with 4 apartments. I lived in the apartment closest to the street of one row, and had 2 cousins that lived in the apartment at the very end of the row, in the back. I would hang out with them just about daily. We were very into soccer at the time, and we would walk to a park about 4 or 5 streets away along with some of the neighborhood kids and play soccer there. Now I say neighborhood kids, but it was a big group of about 15 kids total, and the ages ranged from about 10 years old all the way to 17. One of my 2 cousins was the 17-year-old, which is why my parents allowed me to go without their supervision. So on this day, like usual, we made our way to the park. Some of us would walk, some would ride scooters or skateboards. I had my bike that day. We get to the park, and we start playing. About halfway through our game, my parents drive by and they call to me from our car. They tell me that they're going to the store and to wait at the park for them. Okay, no big deal. I figure they must want to go somewhere else afterwards, and it's easier to pick me up from the park than for me to wait back at the house. Of course, this doesn't make sense because it's a 4-street distance, but at the time, to my 12-year-old mind, it was perfectly logical. We keep playing for about another hour. Then as we get closer to sunset, more and more kids start making their way back to their house. When my cousins wanted to leave, they asked me if I was ready, and I said that my parents told me to wait for them here, so they left and I stayed behind. Eventually it was just me. No big deal. I'm familiar with the neighborhood, and I have my bike and the energy of a 12-year-old. So I start riding my bike up and down the street, just killing time. At this point, it hasn't occurred to me that if my parents wanted me to wait for them at the park, they wouldn't want me to wait past sunset. Eventually, I get impatient and hungry, but not wanting to get grounded for disobeying my parents, I kept waiting. Except instead of waiting at the park, I crossed the street and was waiting there. After a few minutes, a car drove up and stopped next to me. Nothing scary yet. There's a stop sign there, so I don't really pay it much mind. Except when it drove away, I realized the car looked weird. It was old and boxy, like an 80s car, but what stood out was that it looked spray-painted gray. It was definitely not real car paint, or done by a professional. I don't know if someone who stole a car would be dumb enough to draw that much attention to it, or if the look was intentional, but you could tell it was just spray-painted all over. Anyway, it drove away, and I kept waiting, annoyed now. Then the car comes back from the other side of the street. I noticed it because it was hard to ignore at that point, but my survival instincts are still not kicking in. Maybe they were lost, or just wanted to turn around without doing a U-turn. And since the park is a big square, going around it and coming back is easy enough to do. A few minutes go by, they drive up again, and again stop at the stop sign. This time I'm starting to get nervous, so I look at the car. 2 men are inside, very scruffy looking. Unkempt beards, unkempt hair, dirty faces, stains on their shirts. They look at me. They both smile at the same time. They look at each other, smile even bigger in the creepiest smile I've ever seen someone do to this day. Then drove away. Their smile creeped me out so much that I was now on high alert. In particular, I was watching the other side of the park, where they would come from if they went around again like they did the first time. Sure enough, they did. This also means that they were now on the same side of the street as me. So as soon as I saw the car, I jumped on my bike and rode as fast as I humanly could. I could hear one yelling something, but I honestly don't know what it was. I was too busy riding for my life. I could hear the car catching up, but I was too scared to even turn around. I somehow made it to my street and ran into the building. But I didn't want them seeing where I lived, since my apartment would have been the one visible from the street. So I went to the back, behind my cousin's apartment, and hid there. My reasoning was, if they followed me inside the building, they would see me knocking on their door and get me before anyone answered. Worth noting, if it wasn't obvious, this was before cell phones. I waited for what felt like a few hours, but was probably only 20 minutes or so. before I got enough courage to make the short walk down the row of apartments to mine and tried the door. It was unlocked, so I went inside, and my parents were there, sitting on the couch watching TV. They asked me how our game was, completely nonchalantly, and I questioned them and asked them why they didn't pick me up. They both looked confused. They asked me why they would tell me to wait there instead of home when it's a 4-street difference and I had my bike. Once they said that, it did make more sense. But to this day, I swear that they told me to wait there for them. They explained that when they drove up, they told me they were going to leave the door unlocked for me, in case I got home before they did. In my excitement of the game, I must have just completely misheard them. I simply went to my room after that, never telling them about it. Because as a dumb kid, I knew if I said something they wouldn't let me go play soccer anymore. And that was clearly more important than my physical well-being. I never saw those guys, or that car, ever again. I look back on it now, and it doesn't matter how fast I was pedaling my bike. They were in a car. They should have, and could have caught up if they wanted to. So I don't know what their intentions were. If they were just having a laugh at my expense, if they were trying to scare me, or if they actually had something darker in mind. But I do think back on that day now and get chills every time I realize how much different my life would be right now if they had caught me. This happened when I was around 11 or 12, during the summer holidays. About me at the time. Male, about 5 feet tall, out of shape, and very shy. I was traveling with my parents in Europe, and we had been to Barcelona and Paris before, with our next destination being Tarragona in Spain, where an amusement park called Port Aventura was located. We had scheduled to stay there in one of the hotels for 4 days, to visit the park, water park, and beach club. Now, the story I'm about to tell happened on the 3rd day, in the main park. It was getting late, and most of the areas of the park were closed, except for the Mediterranean area, as a show with fountains, lights, and fireworks was being held over the lake that night, as it was the week of the park's anniversary. I asked my parents if we could stay and watch the show, but they were much too tired after an entire day of running around the amusement park, and needed to go to the information desk to make sure that the things we had bought were properly sent to our hotel room. I begrudgingly obliged. As we were at the information center, I felt the need to go to the bathroom. I asked my mother if I could go, and where the nearest one was. Turns out, the closest one is at the edge of the Mediterranean area. My parents were busy at the info desk, and I have no siblings, so they just told me to go alone. I wish I had waited for them to be done, so I could have gone with my dad, because what transpired was pretty traumatizing. So I navigated back to the Mediterranean area and to the bathrooms. The whole area was pretty busy, and lots of people were crowded by the edge of the lake to watch the show. That was about to begin. I entered the bathroom and went on with my business at an urinal, until I noticed a man looking towards me. I normally don't like when people stare at me, as I was shy. But this time, instead of embarrassed, I felt in danger. I glanced back at the man. He was about 6 feet tall, about mid-20s, with a well-built physique, very short hair, almost shaved, Caucasian, wearing a gray hoodie, dark blue jeans, and black leather boots. It immediately struck me as the kind of person you wouldn't find in an amusement park. He was standing in front of the second urinal, as if using it, but I had the feeling he wasn't. I noticed him glancing over at me a few more times. I was done, and eager to leave. I tried to pass behind him, and as I did, I noticed he tried to reach for me. I barely avoided his hand, and he grunted, while I made a whimpering noise. The bathroom was very crowded, so no one noticed it. As I neared the exit, he left his urinal. I left the restrooms, and looked over at the lake. The show had started. There were images being displayed on the water of the fountains, with a projector, and loud music was blasting on all the speakers. I tried to blend into the crowd, hoping to lose him. After about a minute of making my way through the cluster of people, I looked back. Not 10 meters, but about 32 feet behind me. There he was, following behind me through the same paths between the herd that I had cut through. He now had his hood up, covering his face, but I could feel him staring me down. I also noticed he was now wearing what I think were black, fingerless gloves. Alarms were going off in my head, as my previous stance on this situation went from weird and creepy to dangerous. I turned and started to desperately get to an area I could run away in. After about 15 more seconds of squeezing through people, I reached the final stretch of the lakeside pathway. It was empty, too far away from the main show for anyone to be there, yet the speakers were still playing loudly here. Ahead was a maintenance side path, with the gate slightly ajar, and to the left was a turn leading back to the plaza with the Info Central building. I ran as fast as my asthmatic, out-of-shape self could towards the turn. I could hear this man running behind me, his boots getting louder and louder behind me. He was gaining on me. I started to panic and ran even faster than I thought I could, but he was still getting closer. I had reached the turn and changed directions so fast I leaned towards the ground and nearly slipped. I felt motion behind me as if someone had taken a swing at me, and I could hear the man complain in a language I didn't recognize. My working theory is that it was Russian, but it was some Slavic dialect for sure. I kept running through the plaza, directly to the information building, but I didn't hear the man running anymore. I turned around and saw him slip into the service gate at the end of the street. I ran inside the building and grabbed my mom's leg, stuttering and almost crying, but she was occupied with the lady at the counter, and though she saw me distressed, told me to go sit and wait and tell her when we left. I tried to protest, but she wouldn't listen, and was paying keen attention to the lady. As I walked over to sit on one of the chairs, I looked out the door and scanned the plaza with my eyes. I didn't notice anything at first, and almost looked away, but I saw something behind a direction sign, posted next to a tree, in the most remote and dark corner of the plaza. It was the man. It felt like we made eye contact. I turned away and sat in a chair furthest from the entrance. When we were leaving, I looked over in the same direction again, and he wasn't there anymore. I had told my parents, but since I had a vivid imagination as a kid, they chalked it up to me being paranoid because I was alone, and that, even if it were real, there were way too many witnesses for someone to try and pull something of the sort. I wasn't happy to be called a liar about this, but considering how thick-skulled my parents can be, I didn't insist. I was just happy to have gone unscathed. I tried to forget this encounter, and was successful, but having run into this subreddit, and other similar stories of near kidnappings, this resurfaced in my mind, and I decided to post it. As I was typing my story out, I realized how bad my situation was. The people around at the time were distracted by the show, so no one would have seen me get taken, and with the loud music, no one would have heard me scream or struggle. And the fact that maintenance gate was open, and I saw the man enter it, means I almost ran right to where he wanted me. To think that I almost got kidnapped right next to a crowd of people, it boggles my mind. I've never gone alone anywhere in amusement parks since. I work at an amusement park, and I decided to visit with a cousin of mine on a day that I was off because it was free for employees. As my cousin and I were walking the ride, one of the most popular ride, a guy pointed at me, and then looked at his friend saying he likes you. I have never seen these two guys before, so I think nothing of it, and continue to go forward with the ride. Thinking nothing would happen, I was exiting, and they were still sitting there. I didn't notice them again till probably 20 minutes later, since I was talking to a coworker which I liked. As I sat down at a table with my cousin, they sit at the table across from us. When I realize this, I tell my cousin we have to go. I was talking to my coworker again as I see they have stopped by a trash can to clearly see me. I tell him what is going on and that I have to leave if they follow. He was to stop them. I took the opportunity to walk away as soon as I can when they aren't looking. We head to another ride to try to lose them. It was unsuccessful. They followed us out of the ride. I'm scared out of my mind now. I started running as fast as I can to get away and find the closest ride possible. I turned my head and saw them chasing after me. Lucky for me, they made a wrong turn. After we lost them, I sat down in private place until closing time. I figured I hadn't seen them for a half an hour. I could peacefully leave. I was wrong. They were waiting at the front entrance. We somehow snuck by to tell a security officer what happened for the past 2 hours. We were walked safely back to my car, and I have not seen them since.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.